at Build-A-Bear Workshop. I'm headquartered in St. Louis. The company was founded about 30 years ago in St. Louis. So we're happy to, still remain in the city that we were born from. In my role as VP of PR and Communications, I lead all of our internal and external global communication strategies. So everything from what you engage with on social media and see in the press to the emails that get circulated within our company around important updates that we need to communicate to our staff. So it's a wide range of different kind of communications channels and tactics, but a really fun product, obviously, to work on. I'm sure many of you on this call have had an experience as a kid or with a family member at a Build-A-Bear workshop. So it's a really interesting time to be a part of Build-A-Bear right now as we kind of move beyond just mall retail and show up in all different places and spaces from cruise ships to Disney adventure parks to our e-commerce business. So that's me. My background that I studied at Lehigh was journalism and business and entrepreneurship. And I'm currently getting my MBA at Washington University in St. Louis. So look forward to chatting tonight.
We'll go with Alex next.
Hmm. Hi, everybody. My name is Alex Clift. I am a 2000 graduate of Lehigh University. I was a marketing major. I played football at Lehigh as well. I work for a company called Paramount. We were bought by a company called Skydance. We were actually called Paramount, a Skydance company, last year. So I oversee streaming ad sales across our streaming portfolio, which, if anybody's familiar with Paramount Plus, we also own Pluto as well. And my team is responsible for selling all the streaming ads that you see that disrupt your watching when you're streaming across Paramount Plus and Pluto. Like I said, I was a marketing major at Lehigh. I knew I wanted to get into the advertising and marketing space even in college. Actually started my career on the advertising agency side and kind of cut my teeth in New York City doing that for a couple of years before I moved over to Fox. I was at Fox for about 10 years, and then I've been at Paramount for about 15 years now. So look forward to talking with everybody.
Hi, everybody. I'm Katie Massey Burrell. I'm a graduate of O2 of the architecture program at Lehigh. I am a senior associate and senior project manager and commercial studio lead at Kosha Moose Architecture, which is in Philadelphia. We're a mid-sized firm of about 35 people, and we focus on mixed use, multifamily, hospitality, adaptive reuse, and we also have a healthcare department. I went from Lehigh, which is a pre-professional architecture program, to a graduate program at Penn, where I spent 3 years. And then I jumped into architecture, and basically it's been a pretty straight shot since then. But kind of moving up through my career, I started out as an architectural designer and got my license. And currently my role is more leading the commercial studio, managing the groups of project managers, managing the larger projects, and kind of running things from there. So I'm really excited to be talking to you today.
Hey everyone, my name's Breezy Maravich. I graduated from Lehigh in 2018. I was a sociology major and a business minor, and I was also on the Lehigh women's tennis team. I'm currently an interior designer at Urban URBN, also known as Urban Outfitters, Inc. Our company, the umbrella company, owns Urban Outfitters, Free People, Anthropologie, Terrain, Newly, etc. And I work as a retail store designer, so we're kind of the global headquarters for all new stores across the country and abroad in Europe. So on my small team of 7 people, I manage my own projects to design new spaces all over, particularly Urban Outfitters and Anthropologie, but it's exciting and we get to kind of dabble in all the different brands. I had a pretty meandering path to get here, starting in sociology, but I always knew I had a passion for art and an artistic background. And then I went to Pratt Institute for grad school and I graduated in 2021 with a master's in interior design. I worked for a little bit in New York City and then I ended up moving back to the Philly area. And that is where I'm working currently at Urban at the Navy Yard in Philly. Looking forward to going through a lot of good questions with you guys.
Hi, everyone. I also graduated Lehigh in 2018. Breezy, hi, nice to see you. My name is Nadine. I graduated with a double major in global studies and journalism. After school, I went to Adobe for 7 years. So went out west to California, worked on employee communications for the company, and then swapped over to executive communications for the company. Um, Moved from California back to the East Coast to New York City, where I then started my role at Snowflake, where I am currently. So, Snowflake, for those of you who don't know, is a B2B company. We house, the world's largest companies' data, and they kind of analyze and mobilize all of their data, whether it's, JP Morgan or Coca-Cola or Disney, or I'm sure Paramount as well, or Build-A-Bear. They action with us. And my role specifically is I work with our C-suite executives. So I manage all of their communications internally to employees in the company and externally, keynote conferences, social media, press, customer meetings, so on and so forth. So really happy to be here with this esteemed panel and ready to get into it tonight.
Thank you so much. So now we'll be moving on to our second question, which some of you touched on a bit, but what early career experiences helped you figure out what career paths you liked best? And we'll be starting with Alex for this one.
Yeah, as I mentioned in my introduction, I started my career in the advertising business on the advertising agency side here in New York City, which was a an amazing way to kind of get to start into the advertising space. You get exposed to so many different brands that market to the masses in the communications world. And I was fortunate enough to work on some pretty big major brands. AT&T was probably the biggest. And this was in the early 2000s, and AT&T was spending a billions of dollars a year marketing to the United States. And I got exposed to how they plan media, how they buy media, how they put their strategies together to reach the desired consumer. And that was a wonderful experience and kind of got me hooked on the advertising and marketing business. And over the years, advertising has only gotten more technologically advanced and more targeted, as Nadine mentioned. We utilize our first party data to target users. You guys all probably experience this all the time when you guys feel like you're being targeted or you feel like you're being watched. It's true, you are. People want to see relevant ads to them. And it's fascinating to see how this industry has kind of transpired over the last couple of decades from just running a 30-second ad on a television screen to now the personalization that you can do in the advertising space. So, but the advertising agency is a great place to start in this business. They teach you the ins and outs about how media is bought and sold and planned. And it was the kind of the springboard to my career to where I am right now.
I'll jump in. I had a lot of various experiences throughout school, more summer internships, winter break internships. And I really just tried to see the design field, architecture field, kind of from a lot of different angles. I did do a summer internship with an interior designer. I did a summer internship with a construction company. I jumped around and actually did product design for someone who's designing for MoMA. So I guess my approach to it was really that I knew I liked design. I knew I loved problem solving. I knew I loved kind of the act of creating. And I really just wanted to kind of figure out what part of that was right for me. And I entered into the architecture department pretty sure that I wanted to do architecture, though it was really nice at Lehigh that it wasn't a 5-year program. So being a 4-year program allowed me to kind of explore other classes as well. So it wasn't quite as rigid as a lot of other 5-year programs that I had looked into before I decided to come to Lehigh. So that really happened really throughout my school before I got into my career. But then even into my career, I think that the path really for architecture is to kind of figure out what type of work you're interested in, and what size firm feels good to you. So, I kind of started out at a mid-sized firm, went to a smaller firm, went to a larger engineering firm, and then ended up in a mid-sized firm again. So it was kind of a bouncing around trajectory that allowed me to kind of hone in on the scale of projects and, the type of projects that I wanted to work on, in addition to kind of how the firm itself was structured and where I fit in within it. So,
I can relate somewhat being interior design, so I have some similar experiences in that design world. But I'm still fairly early in my career. I've been at Urban for almost 5 years now. Um, and prior to that, I graduated from grad school in 2021, and I did an internship while I was there. But I feel like I really gained a lot of valuable insight to my career path through my professors at school too. I think going into interior design, I wasn't fully aware of all the different disciplines within interior design you could go into. So just hearing from my professors about what field they work in and what types of interior design they do was really valuable in kind of getting advice on what path I wanted to go towards. And I did start out in residential. That was kind of always my passion and my goal. I mean, I grew up, watching HGTV and had this idea of what it was like in my head. And it was a really good experience. I was in New York, but it was very fast paced. And it just kind of shaped my understanding of what it's like dealing with clients in the residential space, and kind of your day to day is a little more unpredictable depending on the project you're working on. So moving forward, knowing I wanted to come back to the Philly area closer to home, I think lifestyle also really shaped my career path as well. Um, and just also having graduated from graduate school during COVID, I didn't have quite as much experience under my belt. So even post graduating from my master's program, I was willing to go into another internship without trying to seek a job right away, just to get more experience. So I think being open to still like testing out ideas before you make a decision is really valuable too. So I actually interned at Urban before I got a full-time job there. And I really liked it and wanted to be there because of the structure of it. Being retail design, it was a little more of a set schedule and kind of more predictable. And the lifestyle was really good, working somewhat hybrid, and then we actually have our Fridays completely off. So yeah, lifestyle kind of shaped career too. So yeah.
Oh, I love that. Fridays off sound really nice. I wish we did that. Um, I was similar to you. Like, I feel like when I was at Lehigh, honestly, I more leaned towards my global studies major. So I think I went abroad 6 times at Lehigh. Like, it was psychotic. Any summer or winter, I was somewhere other than campus. And I really thought I would like work at an embassy or do something on the global side. But what introduced me to the whirlwind of the tech world is actually a professor who introduced me to a Lehigh alumni who was the chief marketing officer at Adobe. So Anne Lunes was also a journalism and global studies major. She's on, or I think was on the Lehigh Board of Trustees, and is just like one of the coolest people I'd ever met. And so when I met with her and she, convinced me in 2 minutes to apply for an internship at Adobe, I had such a whirlwind summer. It was in California, and same breezy. It was very, just cushy tech life. You have sparkling water on every floor, lunch is free, there's meditation rooms, we had like wellness days off. And so the environment was really comfortable, but also the work itself was interesting and different. I think for something like communications, and at the time it was employee communications, you get to try so many different elements of the skill, right? You can do, you know, partner with teams to kind of get a product launch out internally. You can do kind of pop-up interactive exhibits. You can focus on, hey, we won this award. How do we celebrate? To even things like COVID is happening. How do we communicate with employees and make sure that they feel safe and still are excited to work at Adobe and still kind of feel ambassadors of the company, to even things like, we had a failed acquisition that happened at Adobe, and like, how do you work through that with employees and get them excited still about the mission, even though that had happened? So I think comms and trying different elements of it in the beginning of my career really helped me understand what parts I liked and what parts I didn't. Crisis comms are not that fun to me. And, I'm not crazy about PR, but I love the visual communication side of stuff. So I love designing things and, posting on social media for these executives and kind of being their brand manager, so to say. So that element was something I really love. So same, I would echo the same sentiment. Make sure that you get to try different elements, and even interning before is always a really good taste test to what you're getting into.
And I can wrap us up with this question, and everything that I'm going to say is very reflective of what all of my fellow panelists have said in terms of trying things out before you really kind of go fully down the rabbit hole on one area. I mean, when I was in school, I knew fairly quickly I wanted to go into PR. That said, I did take a few early internships outside of that space to kind of explore and just help validate that that was really the direction I wanted to go. So one of those was actually in Allentown at Rodale Publishing. So I was an intern for Women's Health magazine, which was sitting obviously squarely in like the journalism realm, which I was fairly certain was not where I wanted to go, and that that was confirmed. I also held some additional internships in more of like the experiential marketing side of the world in summers, kind of between college, back home in St. Louis, which I enjoyed. It was fun, but it still wasn't like totally my thing. So then after that, ultimately, I went towards PR, and that started with an internship after I graduated at Lehigh, which led to an entry-level role at Edelman, which is a global PR agency. I was specifically in the Chicago office, and that's where I not only kind of got my first taste of PR, but also specifically got into the consumer packaged goods space, which is where I kind of fell in love with in terms of where kind of within the realm of PR I wanted to go. So at that time, I was supporting things like Cheez-It, Pop-Tarts, Eggo waffles, Huggies diapers. So all these things that all of us, come into contact with on a day-to-day basis. And all those brands were doing really fun, exciting, interesting things from a PR perspective. So I happened to find my love of CPG straight away, but I do think that if you're able to kind of dabble in different spaces when you first start out, like had I done a little stint in healthcare PR or in tech PR or in like specifically focused on media relations or specifically focused on influencer work, who's to say I wouldn't have found a different path? But I think for me, I just happened to fall into what I immediately loved, which I feel fortunate about. And that's really where I've stayed since then, supporting CPG. And then ultimately, obviously now I'm at Build-A-Bear, which is still, a consumer product. It's not so much a consumer packaged good, but very much like a fun consumer-centric brand. So that's kind of where I spent my career thus far.
That's a great segue into our next question, which is what sort of internships or experiential learning opportunities would you suggest students take advantage of to gain experience in your field? And we'll start with Katie.
Sure. I think I kind of went into it a little bit on the last question, but I just wanted to kind of reiterate that it really is important to kind of try things that are related to your field, but not specifically exactly what you think you're going to do. I think that there's a lot of experiences. I mean, relating it back to architecture and what I was able to do with, going for product design and interior design and construction. I think there was lessons that I learned and I kind of took with me. Those are all things that you kind of have to understand how they all go together in order to do the architecture that I do. So understanding, how the construction field is approaching a project that's different than the way architects would approach a project. So kind of understanding it from different points of view is really, really interesting and different. If I had to do it again, I probably would say that I would go even further and go into the field and potentially do design build and kind of get my hands in there because understanding how a building goes together would also be like super interesting. From that sort of point of view. Obviously, I'm on the design side. I go to the site a lot, but having the initial experience of actually knowing how a building is built would probably have given me even more of a leg up originally. I guess I would also kind of take the question a little bit further too, because I think early in your career, getting involved in different groups that are related to your career trajectory and kind of start to give you another aspect of how to look at your career in the sense of, being part of, for instance, AIA, the American Institute of Architects, has a lot of committees, especially in Philadelphia, to get involved with. To be involved with housing or advocacy groups or historic preservation. There's a lot of different paths that you can go with that, which means that you can meet different people who are aligned in how they're thinking and also would give you a really great opportunity in the future to potentially get in your next internship or meet the right people to get a little bit further in your career that way. So those are, I think, my recommendations for kind of how you start out and just kind of having a little bit of a broad brushstroke there.
Yeah, echoing a lot of what Katie said is don't limit yourself too early on, just because you have a preconceived idea of what you want to do or what you really don't want to do, if you haven't tried things out yet. So be really open to something maybe more unexpected and um, just apply to as many internships as you can. Even if they don't have something listed on LinkedIn, or an online posting for an internship, if you really love a specific firm, just find their email, reach out directly to them, see if they have any openings or opportunity for you to work there, intern there. Um, so yeah, just really have, again, that broad brushstroke of different possibilities, because I think you might open yourself up to something you didn't even realize could be your future passion. And then I also think alongside internship experience, I think just going out and maybe trying to learn a little bit on your own too, and take a little bit of initiative, specifically in like the design sphere with software. I find, especially with interns that we hire, the interns that are more up to speed with software and have kind of worked on it on their own, even outside of what they've learned at school, are able to hit the ground running, and add a lot of really valuable knowledge, and they're able to take on more in their internships. So going out and even if it's just YouTube, just going and learning and practicing different software, or different skills outside of what you're learning in school is super beneficial.
100%. I can't echo that enough, Breeze. I feel like, this is me biased as coming from Adobe, but like the Creative Suite tools helped so much in my day-to-day job. And I feel like when you do kind of build the skill sets in different types of software, whether it's AI or creative or even something as simple as like being really good at PowerPoint. I mean, I feel like every, you know, company is just making PowerPoints every day, all day. So those types of skill buildings would be really great. Um, Something for me personally, like I wish I kind of did more of a skill building on was honestly like taking more of a business class. Like I really focused on my journalism and global studies majors, which were great. And I think everyone, should be a global studies minor at least of sorts. But now that I'm sitting in kind of these C-suite executive meetings, I feel like I'm getting a mini MBA in itself. And it would be helpful to understand different parts of the business from, taking a minor or something in school. So I think that's something I felt like was missing for me personally that I would totally experiential learn on now. And the last piece of advice I'll give is just like the alumni network at Lehigh is insane. Like there's so many different types of people from different walks of life. And if you can search through LinkedIn, like you see a company you're interested in or a job posting and you can filter by Lehigh alum that are there, just very casually ask for how their day to day is. It doesn't have to be as transactional as like, hey, I'm applying for this job. Can you refer me? But just like, I was you once upon a time and or you were me once upon a time, and can you give me any advice? Would go a really long way.
Okay, I kind of touched on this in my previous answer, so it might be repetitive a little bit, but I think definitely, I mean, I know from the PR side, typically you can't really get an entry level job until you've done an internship or a handful of internships. So, um, that's just, that was like an unfortunate discovery for me when I was applying. But it is what it is. And I do think once you kind of understand the value of that in terms of getting kind of a taste of what you might want to do versus what you might really not want to do, it all kind of makes sense. I do think, I know a lot of companies nowadays offer more like rotational programs where you can kind of come in either as entry level or in like a trainee role, and you can spend certain periods of time within different portions of the company to do exactly what we've all kind of been talking about, which is to see where maybe your passion most lies or where your skill set is best tied to. So I think those were fewer and far between when I was applying for jobs, but I've seen a lot of them out there now. And I think if I were to go back in time, like that's definitely something that I would have wanted to pursue just because. As I mentioned, I felt like I got lucky where I landed, but there could have been something else that I was even more set out or beholden to do. So I think if you can look into any rotational programs, that is great. I think it also allows you to create networks within a company within a lot of different parts of the company. So perhaps maybe where you start at that company and where you spend a couple of years is great, but then you want to pivot and go to another place in the company, and you already have maybe some connections and contacts within those other pieces of the company that you could then leverage, whether it's for mentorship or even, if you want to physically move into that part of the company. So I would say rotational programs. I agree with Breezy too in terms of the kind of being a bit self-taught and showing some proactivity. Not only does it bring value in the sense that maybe you can hit the ground running more easily in a specific tool or doing a specific task, but I think it also shows a lot about a person when they've gone through the motions and been proactive to teach themselves something versus wait to be taught. And I think a lot of times when we're reviewing candidates at an entry level for an entry level role, there's only so much experience that you can expect them to have. So a lot of the decision making for hiring is based on like more like their ability to learn or how you think they can learn quickly or what they will be like as an employee. And I think so any way that you can kind of illustrate that through things on your resume is always going to help and make the decision easier for someone to hire you.
All right, I'll round it out. You guys said pretty much everything, but I will echo, utilize the Lehigh Alumni Network. It's how I got my job in the marketing business here in New York. There was somebody that graduated a year ahead of me that ended up working at that agency. I sent her my resume, and that's how I got my foot in the door. Callie, to your point, there are a number of publications in the media and marketing industry that you can read. They're free to anybody. When we interview people, it's very evident who's done their homework and who's done their research and who's just done the best job of educating yourself on what we do in the marketing and advertising industry. It is not brain surgery to just spend some time reading on these publications and educating yourself on, what just what's happening, right? There's always news with every major media company out there, sometimes bad, but there's at least news to know about what's happening in this space. There's internships with every major media company or advertising agency. The majority of them are based in New York City, but almost every single one of them host a ton of internships every single summer, and the majority of them hire those interns. So it just takes a little bit of effort. But again, filter the Lehigh Alumni Network. I don't know one Lehigh alumni that's not willing to help out a Lehigh student. So utilize that in a big, big way. Because it's probably your fastest way to get, your foot in the door for just even those entry level interviews, having that connection. I think I've probably hired close to a dozen Lehigh graduates in the last 10 years at Paramount just because they reached out to me on LinkedIn. Like very simple things like that are great ways to get yourself connected to the alumni in the industry that you're looking for.
Thank you so much. And also just a reminder to the participants, you're welcome to drop questions in the Q&A chat for the panelists to answer at the end. So feel free to drop those in there. And in the meantime, we'll move on to our next question. Lehigh students are building AI literacy in their respective disciplines. How do you recommend they broach that topic based on the mixed reception of AI in the creative industries you represent? And we'll start with Breezy.
Yeah, I guess starting out, don't be fearful of AI. I don't think it's necessarily replacing our jobs yet. I think, especially in the design sphere, we need like a human element and a warmth and a realistic approach to things. And I know at my company, we've been trying to implement AI and just to stay ahead of the curve, practice with it. And it doesn't always quite do what you want it to do. And it doesn't have that feel, that human touch feel all the time. So I think see it more as like a creative tool. It can be beneficial in generating ideas, and I think it can be helpful in the early phases of projects, almost in a way you might use Pinterest or find other inspiration if you have an idea. Maybe utilizing AI to kind of get that idea out on paper, and then using it as a tool to maybe fine tune the work that you've already done. So don't rely on it to do your work for you, but maybe try to utilize it in ways that can enhance your work, whether it's like putting a final touch on a drawing or a rendering that you've already done. I think it is exciting to see how quickly AI can produce images and produce ideas, but I know a lot of clients still really want to see um, your work and your information and your ideas first. So yeah, basically using it as a creative tool and don't use it as a replacement for um, doing the actual work itself.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like at Adobe we used to say that it's kind of AI is your co-pilot, right? So, for things that are super mundane tasks that just used to take forever. I mean, think about like you shoot a video and you need to edit it and export it for like six different vehicles, right? You need an email banner, you need to include it in social media, you want to have it on TV. I mean, just creating those different iterations of that video would have taken forever. Now you can focus on the creative side of making the video and then the manual part of like cutting it all together or like, putting it into different sizing can be augmented by AI. So I think in the creative element, there are different ways in which you can use AI to kind of complement your work. At Snowflake, an idea that we're really thinking about recently is agentic AI and how do you kind of become better at your job using what you would say is like your personal agent, right? So we just announced something called Project Snowwork, which is my personal marketing agent that I can, say I have to put together this newsletter every Friday for the CMO, and it's super mundane. I have to pull from six different sources. I have to, look at our stock. I have to, go to external and internal and interview people, and it takes forever. This personal agent of mine can through just a chat interface can help me put that together within 30 minutes, right? Like it used to take me 3 hours to put that newsletter together, and it was every week. So I think agentic AI and like in a personal way, you can even use something like Anthropic, Claude Code, or something like that just to play around with. Doesn't just need to be like ChatGPT. You're chatting with it and brainstorming. There are really cool ways to insert it into your workflow. So I would echo the sentiment. Don't be afraid of it. I feel like utilize it because it'll be for your benefit.
Yes. From kind of the PR communication side, we are definitely using AI for those mundane hour-sucking tasks. This is prior to me coming to Build-A-Bear when I was on the agency side. In the agency world, like every hour you have against your client scope is critical. So to be able to streamline tasks like Nadine was talking about that took 3 hours a week to take 30 minutes a week, then you can use those hours that you have collected and been able to kind of save to put towards something that's actually like requires really creative strategic thinking. So even now in my world in Build-A-Bear, we use AI to like draft the first round of a press release, and then I'll go from there and like put my like layer in my touch and my thoughts and my thinking. Same for like coverage reports, which anybody in PR knows those take forever to find like all of the coverage that your brand is in and then summarize like how you're showing up and what the sentiment is and why it's important and what the impressions are. Like that is again a mundane task that takes a lot of time and it's an important thing to do, but AI can do it for me in a matter of minutes, whereas prior to AI, it would have taken a significant amount of hours. So I think agree on the mundane tasks. One of the other things we're starting to do at Build-A-Bear is knowing now that people really treat ChatGPT or choose whatever AI tool you want for searches, like what are the best gifts for a kid or what should I get my daughter who's graduating versus Google. A lot of what we're looking at is how do we make sure that those large language models are bringing Build-A-Bear into those recommendations. And so we use a tool called Muckrack, which was originally just a media monitoring tool. But they can now give us a report that says exactly how Build-A-Bear is showing up in large language model responses. For example, if somebody were to type into ChatGPT, what are the best graduation gifts? We can understand the percentage of times Build-A-Bear shows up in that response from ChatGPT or whomever compared to like our competitor Jellycat or our competitor Squishmallows. So we can really get a clear picture of how our brand is showing up, when it's showing up, and then we can go so far as to understand which specific media outlets and which specific journalists those large language models are pulling from so that we can make sure that those journalists are on our media list and that we're focused on pitching them our newest news so that when they go to cover it, that is out there. And then when that large language model is going to pull, information and use different sources, it's pulling information from the media publications that Build-A-Bear is showing up in. So it's really about getting super targeted and who we're pitching to ensure that our brand is being shown in those searches that we're all doing, whether it be for gifting opportunities or things to do with your kids this weekend, go to Build-A-Bear workshop. So I think it's really interesting to see how some of these tools like Muck Rack, which has been around forever in the PR world, are changing what they are doing to help PR professionals like ourselves be better and be more targeted.
Yeah, and I'll echo what most people have already said. AI is here. Learn it to the best of your ability and how it's going to help change whatever industry that you're going into. It's definitely changing the way that media is bought and sold. The traditional media buying and selling industry used to just be based off of on relationships, right? The old Mad Men days, and it somewhat is still like that. But AI is kind of changing the way that media is planned and bought. It's removing some of the human biases that tend to happen when you're buying media. And that's not a bad thing. That's not removing the human being from the equation. It's just removing some of the potential for human error or human biases in how media is bought and sold. So it's just best to learn to the best of your ability. And again, a lot of the publications and newsletters in our industry talk about this all the time. It's very easy to educate yourself on what companies are doing this well, what advertising agencies are doing this well, what brands are using this in the right way to help get their message out to consumers. It's not a bad thing, but learn it to the best of your ability. If you're not learning it, that's where you're going to put yourself behind.
Yeah, and I think for me, my experience with it is probably pretty similar to Breezy's, just being in very similar industries. We use it pretty extensively for renderings in terms of just polishing them up after they come out of, the first draft. The other thing that's, not the most glamorous is code research. So, obviously as architects, we deal with a lot of building code. And it's not a replacement for kind of knowing the code, but it really is helpful to kind of streamline finding different parts of the code and different searching different codes to find different issues so that you can gather it all together at once. Um, I mean, for us, meeting minutes, obviously, drafting emails, all the stuff that's been said, definitely really helpful for that, the mundane tasks. But yeah, I think kind of sifting through large amounts of text and code is also a great use of AI.
It's great to hear how you're all leveraging AI in your day-to-day routines. Just a reminder for all the students who've joined us, if you have any specific questions for our panelists, please use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and our panelists will be able to share their insights. Before that, I'd love to hear from you all what you think might surprise students most when they enter your field. And we'll start with Nadine.
When they enter my field, I think for tech specifically, and it's not really a surprise, but things move very fast. Like we go from like idea for product to launch within weeks now versus what used to be months and years. And so I think working fast is something that I had to learn in the early days. And then specifically for executive communications, I think oftentimes a lot of these execs, it's funny because they're like mini celebrities in their company. Like you're really brand managing this like corporate celebrity. But in the day to day, they're just trying to figure it out as well. So I find that if you wanted a career in exec comms, like being personable and being able to like actually get along with your executive goes a lot further than, just knowing every skill there is to know. So that's been something that's been really beneficial to me is just being able to kind of be personable with these executives.
I think for public relations, particularly on the agency side, but even elsewhere, I think what surprised me, even starting as an intern, was like the level of responsibility you're given pretty much straight out of the gates, even truly as an intern. Every single body that works within an agency is critical for delivering the work. More than ever, like these agencies are extremely lean. They're running on like the fewest humans possible. And so every person on the team must really like own and be responsible for their work. So it's very much kind of like jump off the deep end and like you learn along the way. And it is a forgiving kind of collaborative environment, but you will be like surprised likely by what you're being asked to do and how you're kind of just asked to figure it out. In a sense. And then I also think, similar to Nadine's point, outside of even just working with C-suite and executives, I think I never understood until recently the importance of kind of emotional EQ and being able to just like be personable and um, like engage with people and just be a human first. Like it seems very easy and natural and like that should be obvious, but there are so many people that I see in my day to day who just don't have that skill set. And it really tends to be a barrier when it comes to like getting people on board to make a decision or getting people to go along with the decision that you want them to go with, or just to even like collaborate on projects together. So I think just being like really in touch with like what makes you a human first, but then also being willing to just like get in there and take things by the reins and jump in and start to do the work.
The only thing I'll add to that is you'd be surprised on how many people will want to help you and want you to succeed, right? They're hiring you for a reason. Like you've impressed them in some way, shape, or form. You got the job. They're going to train you. They're going to help you. But they're going to give you a lot of responsibilities that you probably did not expect right away. And that's not a bad thing, right? Most people go and work for a company that they majored in or an industry that they majored in. You've been trained. Rely on some of that training. Rely on some of that experience, your internship experience. But I think you're gonna be surprised on a lot on all the tools that a lot of these companies have to make you succeed, right? It's in their best interest for you to succeed and for you to thrive within that company. And there's a lot of tools and a lot of, especially the bigger companies, right? They have a lot of resources, whether it's the HR departments or training programs that they're going to put you through. My first 6 to 9 months in my job was literally a training program just to learn the ins and outs of how the advertising industry operated. And that was some of the best 6 months, 9 months of my entire career in this business because I learned the kind of the base of what's expected. So you'd be surprised on how much support you're going to have with some of these bigger companies.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the surprising things is actually for me how long a project takes. We have projects that have been in our office. There was one that took 8 years. So it's kind of a marathon, not a sprint, I guess, for a lot of these projects. So I guess the surprising thing is just how many times that you have to rethink and the depth that you have to go into thinking about every little thing. And then how many times you have to, do it over and over and over again. It's a totally iterative process. And even when you're really far into the project, there's always the potential that something can change. So it's just really interesting because, once you think you have it all figured out, something changes and you're kind of going back and rethinking it. And I think as part of, a design team, every voice is, and every person is really essential. Basically what Callie was saying also, I think that you are given, I think in my experience, you're given as a really early, um, really early in your career, as much responsibility as you're willing to take on. People are really willing to give you a lot of responsibility. And, just keep saying yes and asking for help. To what Alex was saying, everybody wants to help. So don't be afraid of it. Just kind of take it on. And you'll always have someone to ask the question. And, people really, really like being in that mentorship position. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, Katie, I feel very similarly that it's such an iterative process with design projects, and it's uh, kind of a departure from how the school process works. And every project is so precious to you when you're in school. And then when you kind of go out and you're working as a team or as a group and you're working towards a shared goal, it's hard to not take things personally. But I think just being open to the constructive feedback and knowing it's to push your project along farther and make it even better, you're going to have a lot of steps backwards. So just know that like your project doesn't have to be fully realized right away, and it's okay to go back and make changes. And it's ultimately just going to make your project even better, and it's going to benefit everyone. And everyone wants to see your project be successful. So just not taking things personally. And then also being open to collaboration and getting a fresh set of eyes on what you're working on, because sometimes you're so zoomed in to what you're working on that you kind of don't see different changes you could be making, or other possibilities. And sometimes it's nice to have a coworker come over and take a look at what you're working on, and they can give some feedback and maybe see something that you haven't really been able to see because you've just been so honed in. So just really be open to collaboration and constructive criticism.
Awesome. Thank you. So we do have a question in the Q&A box. This one comes from Camila, and the panelists feel free to jump in if you'd like to answer. So the question is, I'm currently job searching and I've seen jobs using language like hire for attitude and train for skill. How can a student show their creative process or behind the scenes thinking in a way that proves they can handle a role they haven't technically had before?
I can start. In the media buying and selling space, the your attitude is a huge part of your first job in our business. Just coming to work to learn every single day with a positive attitude. And again, like I said before, most of these bigger companies are going to train you, right? So I'm not saying you don't need to know what you're doing as you walk in that door, but having a very positive attitude is one of the biggest the biggest assets you're going to have when you start in this industry. Obviously, doing your homework and coming prepared and reading the trades and reading newsletters and reading publications about what's happening in our space just shows your preparation as you walk in the door. But that positive attitude that you're literally willing to do almost anything on day one is one of the ways you're going to get a job, right? Like they're going to throw you into projects that you've probably never even thought about before. So being willing to do just about anything that the team requires of you or that your boss requires of you is a huge asset.
I think one of the things that when I was actually most recently moving or career hopping, a lot of where I found success was in really like taking a nitty-gritty look at the job posting and trying to leverage specific language from that job posting in my own resume so that it could break through and get to a recruiter's desk. And also, I think that there's creative ways to the point of like maybe you haven't had the specific job that you're applying for, but there's likely ways that you can look at the language that they're using in the job description and uh, kind of massage what you've done in a way that reflects back that language or how they're kind of positioning the role. So, yes, it might not be like perfect matching luggage to something you've done before, but I think there's ways that you can use the job description to your benefit and kind of figure out how you can tweak things within your resume or the way that you describe your experiences that will showcase that yes, you maybe haven't done the role before, but you're trainable or you have the right attitude or you're proactive or whatever it is they might be looking for. that has been useful to me in the past.
And I think just to add like one element to that is making that part in your resume like a creative element too, like stands out so much. I mean, the reason I got the Adobe job, like they've told me point blank, was that in my multimedia storytelling class at Lehigh, I made a personal website, and on that website, I just put some random photography that I was really passionate about. And they had seen that and was like, wait a second, she does have this creative element and like it's photography and it's somewhat relevant and that really stood out to them. And then even during the interview, like the part in my resume that we talked about the most, not my internships or anything like that, it was the volunteer program I'd done at Lehigh called the Prison Project, where we tutored at the recreational facility. And that was just like a, hey, what is that? Like, let's talk about it. And that kind of piqued their interest. So being memorable in that sense makes a big difference too.
If no one has anything else to add, I have a question. Fairly simple, but I'd love to hear what is one thing you all love about your current job?
I'll go. For me, there are no 2 days that are alike. We work with some of the biggest advertisers in the world. Think of all the major Fortune 500 companies that are trying to market to the masses. They all try new and different creative ways to stand out from their competitive set in the marketplace. And it's fun to work on some of these big campaigns and help them ideate and get creative and figure out how their brands can stand out from, again, their competitive set. It has gotten very technical now, right? There's so much data out there to target to a very specific audience or even an individual, but the creativity is still the fun part, right? You guys have all seen these awesome advertisements, right? Think of the Super Bowl, right? Think of how awesome the ads are in the Super Bowl. We get to work on things like that. So there are no 2 days that are alike. And companies are really just trying to continue to push the envelope about how they can stand out, how they can resonate with brands, how they can convince people to buy their product. And that's the fun part of my business.
I can jump in next. I think the culture of the company you're at is really important too. And I think my favorite part of where I work now is the people that I get to spend every day with. And I spend more time with them than I get to really spend with my own family. So kind of picking where you're working and being cognizant of the types of people that you're going to be working with is really important. So just being able to enjoy the day to day and have people that are laid back but hardworking and wanting to collaborate and that genuinely enjoy their job. A lot of my coworkers or people that I've worked with have been there for 15, 20 plus years. So I think that kind of says a lot about a company too, when you see that there are a lot of employees who have been there for a very long time.
I'll just go really quickly. I just really love the constant creative problem solving. And I mean, my passion is adaptive reuse, and I actually have a minor in architectural history from Lehigh. And we do a lot of adaptive reuse at our office. And really, it's just so wonderful to kind of walk into a space and imagine what it could be. And then, kind of understand that you have to be the steward of the history of the place and tell the story and also create something new for someone to use it today. So that balance is really interesting, and that's kind of the best part of my job.
Yeah, I would say, learning and having this curiosity lens data is really difficult to understand, especially when it's B2B data. And so I feel like I'm in this new world where I'm learning a lot every day, and I really appreciate that.
So we do have two questions in the chat. They're both kind of about transferable skills or soft skills, tools that you didn't really expect that you would have needed in your career. So I guess what were those skills and what do you recommend for students in terms of those skills?
This is like so silly, but literally making PowerPoints is crazy. Like presenting to an executive is all about like making a PowerPoint and like having an executive summary. And so that's a skill I've definitely never thought I would really have to hone in.
as an architect, I didn't think I'd need to know Excel, but it's really helpful.
I second that. Excel numbers, even if it's basic stuff, it's important that you learn that stuff. So don't skip those classes.
If no one has anything else to add, I think that's a great way to wrap up the panel. Just want to thank everyone for joining us. Thank you to the panelists for sharing your experiences and for the students for joining us. We hope that you learned a lot and had a good experience. So yes, hope everyone has a great night and thank you again for joining.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
everybody.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Crushed it. Bye.
Awesome. Bye-bye. Wait, oh, where did I go? Oh, Jesus. There. Oh my gosh, Katie, I'm losing my thing here.
That time.
Okay. Are we set? Looks like
Yeah,
we
I
might
think
still
we're
have
good.
Okay. I think
And then
it's
we
still
can look and
recording. So it's now
great.
saying stop recording. So I can
Perfect.
stop our recording. Let's see. Are
Perfect.
you sure you want to stop recording to the cloud?